And welcome to another edition of South Texas Now. This is attorney Joe Flores, and it's an honor to have former federal magistrate Brian Owsley, now professor of law. Welcome, Professor Owsley. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's always great to be here with you, Joe. I appreciate meeting with you all.
Thank you. And I was thinking about what to talk about, and there are so many young people out there that I've been talking to lately that are a little bit downtrodden, feeling a little bit down about should I go to law school? And if I go to law school, all these guys are getting hammered by the government. I'm not going to mention any branch in particular, but we'll get into that. What is the climate right now for law students, and what is your opinion about people going to law school right now?
I got to be honest. I'm on the admissions up at UNT Dallas, and we are getting record numbers of applicants. We had a record year last year. Our numbers are up this year by about 30%. My understanding is LSAC, which is the administrator of the LSAT, has seen just an explosion of people taking the LSAT. So numbers are up. I don't think UNT Dallas College of Law is the only place where numbers are up. I think they're up across the board. I do know that we had to basically turn away a lot of good applicants for this incoming first year day program class. And, I can envision that for the upcoming, class that's going to start in the fall of 2026, we might be in the same position, turning away a lot of people who in years past we would have been very excited to welcome.
Well, and I know it sounds a little bit trite, maybe a little cliche, but when people tell me there are too many lawyers, I always say, not enough good ones.
Yep. I mean, I would say the same thing. You and I are reading from the same book, Joe. I mean, because you and I have seen our fair share of bad attorneys, but we know the value of a good attorney, right?
When you were on the bench, you let the bad attorneys know they were bad. I remember. I mean, you'd let them
Uh,
know
you know,
you got to be prepared, you
you
know.
got to be prepared. You got to, if you are, especially when you're, defending someone's liberty interest, you've got to bring your A game every day.
Well, and I remember that. I remember if things were not explained to, and we had a couple of things which has not gone away. Spanish speakers, a lot of them in the federal system,
Yeah.
and a lot of these guys that practiced with me, their Spanish could have been a little bit better. So miscommunication.
Yeah.
And if one of the guys I remember, if a client ever told you, no, my lawyer hasn't explained the effect of this plea agreement, oh boy, it was going to
Well, I
be a long
mean,
morning.
that's the whole reason we were there. And, I understand that sometimes attorneys would explain everything in detail, and then the client in the moment says something that you fully don't expect. But that's the exception as opposed to the rule in that type of situation.
You're right.
And, because we all know that clients can be squirrely too, right? I mean, like you had your fair share of clients where you've gone over, you think they understand everything top to bottom, and then they throw a curveball live, right? And you're like, what the heck is going on here? But by
Yeah,
and
it was bad
large,
enough when they were Spanish speaking only, but when
yeah,
they were loopy and had some psychological issues,
yeah,
or they were so smart, Hannibal Lecter style, they wanted to stall and get a new attorney.
yeah,
They'd
well,
say, "This attorney blows. I need to stall some more."
yeah.
And they try to pull some and a lot of law students out there do not know the real world games people play. it is rough, and I don't want to discourage anyone out there. I've had a couple of conversations, and that's why it was so important for me to call you up and get your perspective as a law professor now, and somebody who's been on the bench, and somebody who's worked for federal judges before, which is a
Yeah.
great honor. A lot of people don't know. I mean, you got to hit the books hard, gone to a good school, and then work for a federal judge. The best of the best get that gig, and then you were on the bench. So, I mean, I want, not only your students but people out there that are thinking about going to law school, that we're getting it, forgive me, from the horse's mouth. When you're a law professor who's lived it. So let's, the moms and dads, the wannabe and dreaming to be lawyers, let's talk about the process. Since you are on the committee for UNT, somebody
Sure.
says, I want to go to law school, and they're a junior in college. I mean, what's the first thing you think?
Start thinking about taking the LSAT. Well, first, even before that, you got to look at your undergraduate performance, right? Because if you are just barely graduating college, you may not be fit for law school, at least right away. I don't want to discourage anyone. People have varying degrees. People have, some people are immature when they get to college. Some people are juggling the fact that they have to work 40 plus hours a week to support themselves and go to college. People have different life stories. But if your GPA is low, that's going to be a factor in where you may be able to get admitted, right? And so that's the first thing. But assuming that you're sort of on course with that, and you're in your junior year, you need to start thinking about the LSAT. And I would encourage you to do some studying before you sit. I wouldn't recommend that you sit cold, because that is going to be a big deal. And I will tell you, when we get reported the LSAT scores, let's say someone's taken it 3 times, we get the all 3 scores, and the representative score is the high one. But if I see someone who has, let's say, a 160, and they've taken it 4 times and they have a high of a 160, and then everything else is like 149, 150, 151, I'm starting to think that maybe they're not a 160, maybe they're more like, a 150 plus, right? So you got to be mindful of those types of things. And you want to do your best, right out of the gate, ideally. You want to be mindful. You want to think about where you want to go and why, right? We're in the state of Texas. We've got 10 different law schools in the state of Texas. And they all have their, good points and their bad points, I'm sure, right? But if you have, let's say, a 155 LSAT score, that's probably about where maybe our sort of upper quartile is. But if you're insistent on going to Texas A&M or the University of Texas, that's pretty low for them and highly unlikely that you're going to get in there unless you have something else. If you're a 4.0 from Harvard, all of these schools have to publish their sort of averages, right? So for example, I think UNT, our incoming class, the lowest quartile, the average is about 152. The median is about 153 or 154, and the high is about 155, 156, right? So, if you're at a 152, you have a shot at UNT, but you got to be mindful that you're at the sort of bottom in terms of LSAT, right? And similarly, but if you're looking at A&M, if you've got a 152, you're probably not going to get in there. I mean, the number, if they bring in a class of a couple, maybe close to 200 kids, there may be one, if that, 152, right? I mean, like, especially A&M these days, they are, as we know in Texas, always competing with Big Brother, UT. A&M is a relatively new law school in the sense of it acquired Texas Wesleyan, and they have been rocketing up the ranks. They want to be in the top, tier of law schools. They want to compete with University of Texas. And I tell people there's only 10 schools in the top 10. You can't fit more than that, right? I mean, you just can't do it. But they're determined to be in the top, right? And they're doing myriad things to doing it. They're getting, getting stronger students. They are, basically acquiring students with higher LSATs. So I'm not sure what their median LSAT is, but I'm guessing it's probably in the mid 160s.
Law schools are becoming a lot more selective about who they're taking. From your point of view, uh, the
So,
your
yeah,
law
go ahead.
school, for instance, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry I
Oh no,
interrupted you.
your law school, for instance. I mean, it has a very decent LSAT score. I mean, like you said, A&M and UT are competing. But if you're at 150 or better, generally you have a shot. If you've got a say a 3.7, 3.8 average or better, how much does that weigh in having a high GPA if your LSAT score isn't exactly stellar?
So, every person is different. So, what I say is really sort of as I go through, and I was doing it yesterday, I'll do some later today. I've reviewed so far probably, several hundred uh, applications already this fall. So everyone's different, right?
Right.
But let's go with your 3.738 GPA. That GPA from, let's say, Harvard is not this probably the same as that GPA from Joe Blow University, right? I mean, like, in other words, a 3.8 from one institution is maybe not doesn't carry as much weight as a 3.8 from another institution, right?
Say A&M College Station. No, let's even make a more immediate. Like we're filming here in Corpus. A&M Corpus Christi has a 4.0, and somebody from Harvard has a 3.5. I mean, you're going to look at those differently then.
Possibly, and assuming they have the same LSAT score, right? Another thing I want to see is what they studied, right? If the Harvard person studied basket weaving
I
and
was
the A&M Corpus Christi studied mechanical engineering, I think that mechanical engineering is a much harder thing to study as opposed to basket weaving. And I'm not discounting the importance of studying basket weaving. I'm worried about the rigors of law school, especially the first year. And if one hasn't been challenged or pushed in their undergrad institution, then maybe they might not do so well in law school, right? And so that's part of the calculation. So what you're studying and how well you did at studying it do matter, right? Um, and so that factors into it, right? We have a number of great universities in Texas, and I see a lot of graduates from them, right, applying. So we get a lot of people from College Station. We get a lot of people from University of Texas in Austin. We get a lot of people from Baylor, SMU, TCU. These are great, great institutions, but we also get a number of great people, from A&M Corpus Christi or UT San Antonio or other places around the state. Another thing that I need to be cognizant of is And it goes both ways. Not everyone can afford to go to a 4-year institution all 4 years, right? In other words, we see a lot of applicants who go to their local community college and then will transfer to the 4-year institution for the degree. And I think that's fine. I understand the reasons for that. Some people aren't ready, maybe coming out of high school. Other people want to save the money and stuff like that. But I'm always wary if I see a lot of changing from one institution to another because I like to see some continuity. Moreover, let's say if you really crushed it at Del Mar, right? You went to Del Mar for a couple years, and let's say you got a 3.8 for your first 2 years. But then you go to, I don't know, let's say UT San Antonio or UT Austin or College Station, right? And your performance there goes down and your overall GPA that's reported is, let's say, 3.3, but your degree the degree from the institution that's issuing it shows that you did only about a 2.9 there. That's a difference, right? And that may impact me. Also, I always like to see an upward trajectory, right? I think it's perfectly fine to go into your first year of college and not know what the hell you're doing, right? And be confused, party too much, have to adjust to the fact that mom and dad aren't there telling you to study or whatever. And you may not do as well as you could. I didn't. I know lots of people didn't. I like to see an upward trajectory, right? So ideally, your worst semester is your first semester. Your second worst is your second semester, right? Your best semester should be your last semester, right? I mean, that's the ideal, that upward trajectory, right? Because it shows that, while, many people, including myself, were immature at the time of going to, first year of college, you develop over time and you strengthen over time.
I've had people that I've gone to law school with that had a low LSAT score, and they did great.
Yeah.
I had people with a high LSAT score, the upper quartile that I was with. I went to South Texas College of Law, decent, middle of the road school, and our average was like low 150s to mid 150s, and we'd have somebody with a 160, and I go, wow, this guy's gonna ace it. No, they bombed out.
Yeah, yeah. That happens, right? So let's be clear. The LSAT really only is an indication of generally how well an individual likely will do their first year of law school. So in other words, it's not an indication of how well you're going to do in law school overall. It's not an indication of whether or not you're going to pass the bar on the first time or ever. It is merely an indication, most strongly, of how well you're going to do in your first year. Now, I would posit, though, how well you're going to do in your first year is indicative of how well or what your chances are on passing the bar the first time. And the reason I say that is, one, there are correlations between first year GPA and bar success. But more importantly, I think the reason that there is a correlation between those two is that what you're being tested on the bar is foundational. And what you're learning in your first year is foundational. So if you struggle your first year, when you start to open up the books to study for the bar exam, your foundation is weak. And it makes it harder for you to do well. You have to shore up that foundation in order to overcome the deficits that you may have had from your first year. But, LSATs, they're just enough. Now, we get a lot of people on things who say, well, LSAT, it's just a number and I'm not a good test taker. And, please look at my GPA as more indicative of where I am. And I understand those positions. They don't really sway me that much because you know what's coming at the end of law school? when you tell me that you're not a good sort of test taker, a really big, important test. I tell them it's going to suck. I tell them that all
Bad.
throughout like law school, and they don't believe me, right? And then they get to studying for it, and they realize it does suck. And then what I'm telling them is, you better really work your butt off because you don't want to do this more than once. And they agree with me that they do not want to do it more than once.
I mean, I was okay when I took, and I recommend this strongly to anybody. And I'm not recommending any particular, sort of study product that's out there, but studying for it by taking a review it is fundamental. Now there's
I think you need a review these days, and part of our tuition includes a review course for our graduates.
oh, that's wonderful.
So
Now there's the elephant in the room that we haven't talked about. We got 5 minutes left. People say, well, why am I writing a writing sample, or why am I writing a personal statement to a guy who's looking over hundreds and hundreds of these? And I'm just, saying why you should, take me. And I've got a high GPA. I've got a middling LSAT. Is this going to make the difference? How weighted is that personal statement you send to somebody?
that personal statement is really important. I read those things closely, very closely.
Now
And I read them for a couple of different things. And I'll give you an example. Yesterday, there was a student that was sort of, or an applicant rather, on the cusp. And that person's writing went against them. And that was at least a significant factor in the deny. Because I think that person, if I remember correctly, wrote 2 pages on something, and it was all one paragraph. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm just like, oh my God. And the thing is, somewhere along the line, people were told to write about their worst thing that ever happened to them in their personal statement.
oh boy.
And so I get two categories of bad, events that often fall very flat in a personal statement, right? And the first one is, we get a lot of people who are talking about having gone through some kind of sexual assault. And horrific, horrific. And no doubt it really impacts them. But having gone through that experience doesn't necessarily mean you should be an attorney. Now, some people do that, and then they say, but now I see that I want to work with victims, or I want to go into the prosecutor's office, and I want to, and then they're almost like bringing it full circle. And I understand that. And so that makes sense. But sometimes they just like, it's like, oh, this really horrific thing happened to me. Let me into law school. And that's not really compelling to me. The other category that I kind of see is my parents got a divorce, right? I'm like, welcome to the 50%.
I was going to say that. Yeah.
Right. Again, no doubt tragic. I'm still sure that my children are sort of unpacking, their parents' divorce. But that in and of itself doesn't mean that you should go to law school or provide a compelling justification. Now, the people who do that and then do it well, what they do is, my parents got a divorce. It was very traumatic. The person that helped me was the guardian ad litem, or, one of my parents had a family law attorney who really helped our family get beyond this. And now I would like to be that as an advocate for the next generation. Then you're again bringing it full circle. And this traumatic event that you had or experienced makes sense in the context of why you want to go to law school. Otherwise, it's just a story about something really horrific that happened to you. And we all have those stories, but that doesn't mean that you need to go to law school.
Well, I mean, thank you for bringing that out. We got 2 minutes flat. Anything that you can tell the students out there that want to become a lawyer? Anything else?
So in terms of application, we're probably getting close to where it's too late for this coming fall. I suspect that if people are starting to send it out in January, it's going to be too late probably for our law school and many other law schools. Um, so you got to keep in mind that if you get rejected, and this goes back to your Reddit comment, I know people were pillorying us and saying, what do they want? They think they're too good. It's like some of you just waited too long, right? And I've seen people who applied last year, didn't get in, who are applying this year in the fall, and they have increased their chances of getting in greatly, right? So that's one thing is you got to keep in mind if you don't get in, think about what you want to do. Like think about why you want to apply, and by all means apply again. But if you're done with college, you can't really increase your GPA. If your GPA, undergrad GPA is low, you can't increase that. But you could get a graduate degree and do well in that and show why that makes you a good law candidate. If your LSAT score is low, well, think about studying for that and then trying to increase that because that can make a big deal, right? The other thing is when you have letters of recommendation, don't use the same stuff over the next cycle because I see stuff, for this go around that was written for last year, right? I mean, it's like you didn't care enough to sort of really robustly improve your application. Why do you think you're going to improve your chances of getting in? Right?
I really appreciate the PTSD that you brought to me after 25 years of practicing law. I forgot how tough it was to get in. Ladies and gentlemen out there, Professor Brian Owsley, former federal magistrate, also clerked for the Biggies in federal court. Notre Dame guy, right?
Yes, sadly, we're a little unhappy this Christmas.
Yes, I wish you the best and the kids, and I'm very proud of them. We're out of time, and thank you so much for your advice. I think you've done a lot for people that are aspiring to be lawyers.
I hope so.
Take care, Professor Owsley.
All right.
Bye-bye. The details matter. Every person matters.
He is a straight shooter.
I love that he helps the community.
He's committed to his clients in a way that you never feel like you're being left out.
He applies the same attention, the same strategy.
Very smart.
Whether it's with their sons or daughters in trouble with the law, it's my clients who inspire me to keep pushing. I can't let them down.